You'll never believe what happened in school today.
You learned something.
Bobby Brown is going to do a video in our history class.
Mr. and Mrs. Brown, son?
Mom, he is only the deafest R&B artist in the country.
Well, I'm not surprised. As loud as they play that music, I'd be deaf, too.
Mom, deaf like fresh.
Oh, well, at least he showers.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, you are looking fly as ever today. What are we talking about?
Jay, today our show is the miggity Mac Daddy of shows because we are dealing with early 90s hip-hop, R&B guest stars in sitcoms.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Let's just take it nice and slow. One of our major tropes that we haven't gotten to yet is the pop star guest spots. We
That's
have
right.
a whole page on our spreadsheet devoted to that.
Or musician guest spot.
The Beach Boys alone, Davy Jones from the Monkees alone. Some of these guys would they have a whole trope unto themselves. They have a half a dozen guest appearances. So,
and we've got plenty of these folks who've gone on to be actors.
Yes, there's a whole thing. Obviously, since the dawn of entertainment, this line between musician and actor has been kind of blurry. And as we've talked about between us many times, within this trope of musicians appearing on sitcoms, there's a wide range of uses for them. And sometimes they play themselves and it's about the characters coming into the orbit of a pop star. And sometimes it's the musician trying to practice their acting chops.
Yes,
and so they
cut their teeth as an actor.
Right. And so they play a proper character. So there's so many different ways to attack this. But we noticed that there was a concentration of a lot of these early 90s hip-hop artists, your Kriss Krosses, your Humpty Humps, your Tupacs, etc. That would show up in sitcoms around this time. And because we are both, as we will discuss, very much children of this early 90s time, we thought maybe we would do the opposite of what we usually do, which is to try to have a nice smattering of time periods. We thought,
like across the ages of sitcomery.
Right. This time we're going to go full time capsule and really focus on that 1990 to 92, 93
era. 1989 to 1992.
Right. So let's start there. We're about the same age, but as we talk about being just a handful of months apart in age and being in different school years.
And different parts of the country.
Right. Really affects our recollections of this particular time period. Because we were in like middle school going on high school around the time.
I was in elementary school going on middle school around this time. Like 1989, I was in 4th grade.
So sometimes it almost feels like there's a generational shift between us from this literally 6-month age difference, because at that time in your life, it is so critical in terms of moving from, and your tastes, moving from childhood to sort of normal mainstream stuff.
Right.
So I'll just ask you, what was your relationship with this kind of music at this time?
Kind of unaware, right? For the most part. So the earlier ones, like Bobby Brown, we're going to start in 1989. Bobby Brown has a guest appearance on 227. I knew about him, in this episode, the teacher keeps doing My Prerogative. I knew about that song. I definitely got down to that song because it crossed over onto pop radio. So it was there. Bell Biv Devoe, I knew about for later on because Boys to Men, who I was into, they name checked them.
East Coast Family, baby.
That's right. They name checked them in the ABC, BBD, right? And so that's how I learned about Bell Biv DeVoe, but that was not something, I don't think I knew. What is their famous song?
Which one? Bell Biv DeVoe?
Yeah.
Poison. Can't trust a big butt and a smile.
That girl is poison.
Yes.
So I did know that song. I guess I just didn't remember. I don't know. See, and my poor little brain can't even recollect back to 1991. So yeah, and then, so we've got Bobby Brown, we've got Bell Biv DeVoe, we've got Digital Underground. And of course I knew about the Humpty Dance because that was one of those ones that got everybody in trouble. You weren't supposed to listen to that song. And then our last one is Kriss Kross, which I definitely knew about. Now we're in 1992, right? This was solid middle school for me, wearing the clothes backwards, doing that dance in the dances and my middle school dances, standing in the group of girls and just getting down, That's my experience. Long-winded. How about you?
Yeah, I was very much in on this. I think without turning this into a whole cultural studies thing, I think about how there are these moments in American culture where the Black culture and the mainstream sort of link up and then separate again.
Yeah, this was definitely a time for that.
Yes.
For sure.
So you think about how in the mid 80s, I recently watched the documentary about the Thriller video and album, and Michael Jackson was told outright, we basically only play white artists on MTV.
Right.
That's our audience, Cyndi Lauper, whoever else.
Madonna.
And so, yeah, Madonna, exactly. And so we don't really have room for you. And so Michael Jackson, for whatever his picadillos that we don't want to be totally defending him, he set about making the greatest music video the world would ever see so that they would have no choice but to play his music. So my point just is that mainstream music was pretty white in the 80s. And then as you start getting into the late 80s, into the 90s, those rock bands start jumping the shark with the big hair, and the, pop music in general just starts getting a little tired. And this sort of family-friendly hip-hop music is ready to fill that void. One of the hip-hop artists that we're going to talk about not as a guest star, but as a full-on proper star is the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, right? And his whole existence as a part of this mainstream TV world, I think, is part of that transition of, hip-hop and rap, which is very young to begin with, breaking into the mainstream with artists like him who are very accessible and, just like I said, family friendly. They're easy for people of all stripes and all ages to connect to. He's funny, he's charismatic. And so, yeah, what you're seeing at this time is this takeover of, we're going from MTV only plays white artists to please give us your rappers, give us your R&B artists. That's what we want. So for me, I will say the first cassette tape I ever bought was the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack,
which we now have the album of on vinyl.
And it featured front and center the Bobby Brown single On Our Own, in which he delivers the famous rap, too hot to handle, too cold to hold, they call the Ghostbusters and they're in control, etc., etc. It ends with him saying, found out about Vigo, the master of evil, try to battle my boys, that's not legal, right? That is the challenge he throws to Vigo the Carpathian, the villain of Ghostbusters 2. I loved this
Your
song.
Your rapping skills are so
Yeah, no, don't need to finish that sentence. I know what you're going to say. Yeah. No need to compliment me. So, yes, I absolutely loved this Bobby Brown song and everything that follows. I feel like we can get into it a little bit, show by show, the different musicians, but I was very much into this for a few years until 1992. Nevermind comes out, Kurt Cobain hits the scene, and everything changes. And then for the rest of my teenage years, I'm into the grunge rock. But from ages, 11 through 13 or so, this was very much my jam. MC Hammer, Bell Biv DeVoe, all this stuff.
All these guys. That's so interesting as you talk about Nirvana and Nevermind as the, okay, now white people come back in and sort of take over MTV. Yeah, it's interesting because for me, that shift wasn't as severe when, Nevermind came out and like Smells Like Teen Spirit was definitely, a major part of my kind of music middle school era. But so were Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and and then like Coolio a little bit later. Like
exactly. That was a little bit later.
I loved that music, that like, I guess the gangsta rap, right?
Exactly.
I loved that music, and I loved it right alongside, Nirvana and Green Day, which was a little bit later. I got into like kind of punk and ska kind of stuff there too. So like, but that it was all one to me. It really was just like all of this was like good music, as opposed to being like, okay, I had my time where I was hanging with the black artists. Now I have my time where I'm hanging with the white artists.
Well, and to be clear, I didn't think of it in racial terms at those times. It was more like, this is the dancey, poppy, that kind of music. This all sounds like it comes from a synthesizer and stuff. And then you get into, no, I want bands. I want something where they're playing guitars and wailing on the drums and stuff.
Yeah.
So
and puberty kicks in and you get angry, and little white boys love rock music. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the mid 90s. Yeah, that's where it was at. And I'll just say, famously, Smells Like Teen Spirit dethroned I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston, which had been on the top of the charts for like 27 weeks or something.
Oh, yeah, wow.
So that was considered this sort of changing of the tides, even though, of course, like you say, it's not quite that simple. And then, Snoop and Dre and all of those guys, even though in a sense they're contemporaneous, I feel like that was the response to the stuff we're going to talk about today, to this family friendly, we're going to come on your TV sitcom and say,
and we're starting to see that when we get to A Different World and like who Kriss Kross, the characters that those guys are playing, even though in the show.
It's funny that now it's come full circle and Snoop Dogg is like, please let me goof around in your family sitcom.
Right,
why
exactly.
Not? But, okay, let's start with, did we say our lineup?
Well, I kind of mentioned them in the guest stars. So we've got 227, season 5, episode 7, Video Activity, guest star Bobby Brown. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, season 2, episode 11, The Butler Did It, guest star Bell Biv DeVoe. Drexell's Class, season 1, episode 17, Cruisin, guest stars Digital Underground. And A Different World, season 6, episode 11, Original Teacher, guest stars Kriss Kross.
Yeah, so we talked about 227 once before in our Pee Wee Herman guest star appearance.
Right.
Is this the same show? Like, I'm looking at this thing. I don't see the same people. I thought they were in a store the last time.
Well,
like,
they had gone
where's
shopping.
Jackie? I'm a little disoriented.
So I think, we talked about last time that there was this ongoing dispute, like behind the scenes between Marla Gibbs and Jack A about like who's bigger billing and whatever. And Jack A was getting like critical acclaim, but Marla, this was supposed to be her starring vehicle. So yeah, there was definitely some drama going on behind the scenes. Not sure if Jack A had left the show at this point, but she's not. I mean, this is the last season. It's
right. So she's not in this at all, whether it's because she has the week off or what.
And the last episode also, we didn't get any of the kids. Like this was just, when we watched it with Pee Wee Herman, it was like this weird little bottle episode where the 3 adults had gone shopping. Yeah. And we didn't see anybody from the building and all the other cast of characters in 227 that are a normal part of the show. Well, this one, we get to see all of those people. And so Regina King, this is, a big deal for her. The episode starts and we're in her classroom at her school. She plays the daughter on 227, and she is hearing from her teacher, who is like this very kind of whacked out.
Yeah, this teacher, I would say he's pulling from the Jim Carrey school of acting, but I feel like this might be even a little before that.
Yeah, but he's also trying to do that like stand by me kind of thing of like, I'm such a cool teacher, yo.
Sure, but he is a cut up. He is very wacky and silly. I'm going to reference for the second week in a row.
Color Me Bad?
No, well, I was going to say he's got the fashion sense of the guy in Beetlejuice who's hanging hanging from the little wire in the bureaucracy office.
Because he's got the huge shoulder pads.
Gigantic
Well, I don't know
blazer.
what teacher is wearing like this cool of clothes. Like he has this like super trendy jacket, blazer on.
You could fit two of him in this thing.
And
it is flat.
And it's flat. Yeah. And the shirt underneath, and it's these huge geometric shaped buttons. Like there's no way you're getting those through the holes. I was like, what is going on with this guy?
We've never met him before, we who don't normally watch the show, I'm sure we have if we'd watched the show, but the impression I get is he's supposed to be like overall a nice, positive character, but very silly, wacky, in-your-face guy. He comes into the classroom and announces that they are going to be shooting a music video for Bobby Brown. Well, first, he's coy about who the artist is. He says, you guys have to guess.
And then he keeps going, it's my prerogative.
Yeah,
they guess everyone but him because he does it so bad. They're like, Milli Vanilli?
Yeah. Yes, we get multiple references to Milli Vanilli here. So I was wondering, is this pre or post scandal from Milli Vanilli? Did we know that they were lip syncing?
I think this was pre, because this is 1989.
So Milli Vanilli gets a lot of references, I think partially just because it's kind of fun to say. And even before their scandal, they were a little goofy, kind of easy to make fun of. But yeah, this teacher is like, come on, guys, you know who I'm talking about, my prerogative. And they still don't get it. So just to explain to the youngsters, Bobby Brown basically had one album, right, called Don't Be Cruel. He had more, but all of his big hits, except for the aforementioned On Our Own, which is only on the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack, he had My Prerogative was probably his biggest song, and Don't Be Cruel and Every Little Step are his other big ones, and they were all on this same Don't Be Cruel album. So My Prerogative is his huge song, and this teacher is singing that. They still don't get it, and so he has to tell the kids, Bobby Brown, he's the one that's coming to shoot his video in our classroom.
That's right.
For some reason.
And they are freaking out. They're all excited. Now, in order to be on it, they have to write an essay over the weekend about Ellis Island, which is what they're studying, 500 words. And whoever gets the top 5 scores in class gets to be in the video. Well, we find out later on that Bobby Brown wants the whole class in his video, so it doesn't matter, but that sets up the center conflict in the story. So the setup for this is everybody's going to go home for the weekend and try to get the best score, write the best essay so they can be in the Bobby Brown video. Regina King is like, I am going to do it. That's it. I'm going to spend the whole weekend writing this essay. It's going to be amazing. And then her neighbor, Curtis, and her dad come in and they are having an argument over who's going to win the game this weekend, Howard or Morgan, right? Those were the two universities.
Yeah.
And so Curtis is for Morgan and the dad is for Howard. And so Curtis invites Regina King's character to go to a pre-party the night before the game. And she's like, it'll be fine. I have all weekend to write my essay. So she keeps going to these. She ends up going to the game.
Well, we should just mention before all this, she's told her mom about the essay that she has to write. She's told her about this whole scenario. And that scene is funny just because, again, talk about time capsule. This is your classic, Mom, don't you know the cool words us kids say now? She comes in going,
the dopest, freshest.
Yeah, she goes, it's going to be deaf. And she goes, I don't mean deaf like you can't hear. I mean deaf like fresh. And the mom just doesn't get it. And she's like, all right, how about cool, Mom? Can we settle on cool? And it is funny how still 40 years later, cool is the one slang word that seems to never go away.
That's right.
We can always agree on that.
Because now it's all about the Riz.
Yeah, exactly. But so, yes, deaf, dope, whatever. We have to bridge this generation gap. And yes, this is going to be important because the mom is going to be the little Jiminy Cricket on the daughter's shoulder, always reminding her.
Oh, no, I thought you were going to say this is when the mom and the daughter have the conversation where the mom's like, oh, I wrote that essay when I was in high school. I got an A+.
Yeah.
And that is like immediately my spidey senses go off. You know, we're spending tons and tons of hours at my work right now at everybody's work, but I work at a school just trying to figure out what we're doing with AI. So my spidey senses immediately went up and I was like, oh, her mom wrote an essay?
Yeah.
Oh, her mom has the essay? She saved it because she got an A+?
The original AI is your parents having written the same thing.
It's your mom's essay.
But so, that's going to be a thing throughout the episode is the mother wanting her to get the essay done before she goes out.
Well, and the mom's just reminding her, and then she procrastinates all the way to the last minute. It's 3:00 in the morning on Sunday night because she spent all weekend partying and having a good time and, you know, making that choice instead of writing the essay. And then she remembers at 3 a.m. that mom's essay is sitting here in the like little hutch that's next to the dining room table.
She remembers it while she's, you know, up at the kitchen table in the middle of the night working on her essay. The dad comes in and is like, oh, you've got like 4 whole hours before you need to have the essay finished and get ready for school and pack your lunch, blah, blah, blah. And she's just kind of freaking out. And this is my nightmare. Like, I am somebody that now I never procrastinate because I did this kind of thing when I was young and it scarred me. These kind of experiences, whether it was being a kid and not doing my homework and not being able to like enjoy my free time, or even like as an adult having to stay up until the wee hours and, you know, being so tired while you're also trying to do this important thing. It sucks. So I was like really just gritting my teeth throughout the whole episode leading up to this. You know, we've sort of glossed over it, but there's like 4 or 5 instances of the daughter going out, doing something fun with her friend, the neighbor kid, and telling the mom, oh, don't worry, I have the whole weekend. Oh, don't worry, I have the whole day. Oh, don't worry, I have till tomorrow, you know, and I'm just like, God, just do it and then have your fun.
Which I am the exact opposite of that. I would be just like Regina King. I would go, and be at 3 a.m. just trying to like scramble together this paper. Now, I've never done what she did, though, which was like grab the old essay. Oh, I can't say that because that's not true. I definitely have done that. Ooh.
Well, but you couldn't. This whole scenario is pretty crazy. The idea that the mom wrote this paper when she was in school and had it this whole time.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know. I have saved still on USB drives somewhere.
Yeah, maybe, but it wouldn't be something where someone would go like, oh, let me get that, and just like walk 2 feet over to a drawer.
No, that was what was weird. It was that the place that the mom keeps her high school keepsakes is in the hutch next to the dining room table. Yeah. And one of those keepsakes is Fred the frog that she dissected that's sitting there in a jar full of formaldehyde, that every time they open up that little hutch, they go, ugh, and close it really quickly. I'm like, no, this is not, that stuff would be like in the attic, in a box under your bed. I mean, it would definitely not be in the dining room.
Yeah, it's a little funny how it's so handy. But yeah, that's what Regina King does. Brenda, I think is her name in the show.
So she is like, all right, that's it. I'm taking mom's essay. So she takes her mom's essay, she rewrites it, and that's what she's going to turn in. Now that's kind of the main storyline. Well, there's a B plot, right? The teacher is also friends with this other guy who lives in the building who has quite a jerry curl, and he is a limo driver. He's trying to get his like limo business started, and the teacher is the one who's like coordinating the Bobby Brown visit for the school. And so he's like, hey man, I hooked you up. You're going to be picking up Bobby Brown at the airport and taking him to the hotel. So the guy who lives in the penthouse hears that this other guy is going to drive him around in the limo and contrives to get him up there because he wants Bobby Brown to be brought to his penthouse so that he can sign him to some sort of like licensing deal and have like sofas and shirts that are Bobby Brown on him.
The first thing he says is, I have an idea for a line of Bobby Brown fashions.
There it is.
So yeah, again, we're dropping into this. We're not familiar with all these characters, but this guy, Julian is his name. He's one of the police detectives in the Terminator, the original Terminator, if you remember that movie. He's one of the guys going like, so you're saying you're from the future. But so, yeah, you get the impression he's some kind of sort of entrepreneur type guy, or just, this eccentric rich guy who has all of these ideas, who's always like, oh, here's my next scheme. Here's my next thing I want to do. So yeah, his whole thing is just get Bobby Brown here. Just get me in the room with him.
Right.
And I will work my magic. So we should just flag this as a subtrope of a lot of these episodes, the ones we're covering today, and just in general, the idea of the pop star sort of casting a shadow over everything and only being in the episode for a few minutes, but sort of shaking up the whole community. That everyone's got a different angle on the idea that Bobby Brown's coming to town.
Yes. And so the way that the guy who's driving the limo gets this to all happen is he tells Bobby Brown that he's not going to stay at the hotel, that he's reserved a penthouse for him. So he takes him over to this Julian guy's penthouse in the building, and Julian's like, what do you mean you're staying here? He's staying here? And the guy's like, yeah, I had to get him here any way I could. So that's what happens. Now, one of the nosy neighbors, the older lady, Pearl Shea, played by Helen Martin, she sees Bobby Brown coming into the building and going up to the penthouse. And so she comes over and she tells the mom and is like, oh my God, Bobby Brown is here. And I knew who that was because of some silly thing, because she didn't really know who it was.
There's a running joke that every time one of the kids mentions Bobby Brown, the two parents go like, yeah, I know him, Mr. and Mrs. Brown's boy.
Right. So she knows who he is, though. And then Regina hears this and they all go running upstairs. So she's so excited. Now, at this point, the teacher has given her essay back and she knows she's not going to be in the video. Yeah. She got a C+, not an A+, and she's devastated because she thought she was a shoo-in because this was an A+ essay. Well, so apparently on the way out of class that day, she threw her essay in the trash. She was so upset that she wasn't going to be in the video. The teacher comes over to the house to return her essay and is like, hey, to the mom, hey, your daughter dropped this in the trash. I don't know what's going on. And the mom is like, oh, I'll read it and figure out what's happening. I can't believe she did that. Right. So the daughter comes home, says, I'm not going to be in the video. I didn't get a good grade. And the mom's like, well, that's because you waited till the last minute. Of course you got a C+. You didn't write a good essay in that short of amount of time. And the daughter's like, no, it was an A+ essay, but doesn't tell why. And so then the lady comes in and we find out Bobby Brown's in the building. So they go upstairs. And just as they're heading upstairs, that's when the teacher comes in. And so the mom is holding the folder with the essay as Regina runs upstairs to go meet Bobby Brown. And she was like, well, maybe I'll just read it and see if I could help her at all or whatever, and opens it up and realizes that it's her own essay and comes running out and goes upstairs to go find her daughter in the penthouse who's trying to meet Bobby Brown. And then it all comes out.
Yeah. We should talk for a minute about just the moment when Bobby Brown himself actually arrives.
Right.
Because there is something about, even knowing that we're watching it for that reason, you get a little starstruck when Bobby Brown
Yes, they definitely build it up well. You don't know that he's coming in to the room, and then the guy who drives the limo reaches back outside the door and is like, Mr. Brown, come this way.
There's also a rich history in sitcoms of having the non-guest spot. There's a Golden Girls episode where the whole time is like they're trying to meet Burt Baccarat or whoever.
Right, and they never show.
And they never actually show the person, And so the whole time, you have to kind of take these things with a grain of salt. Is this going to be the thing? Oh, it's all about getting into the Kiss concert, but we never get to see Kiss. So yeah, when he comes on, I do get a little bit of a jolt from there he is, Bobby Brown. He's got his sort of trademark black suit and the parachute pants, right? He's dressed very much like he is in the Every Little Step video. He's got the sort of Gumby haircut, which again,
he name checks. He calls it the Gumby haircut.
Yeah, well, because one of the ideas is this crazy rich guy is I want to make Gumby wigs or Gumby.
He doesn't even say Gumby wigs. He's like, we'll make a brand, we'll brand your hair and sell it as wigs. And then Bobby Brown says, this guy wants to make Gumby wigs.
Yeah, so it's very much, again, cementing it in that exact moment in time. He had this in the On Our Own for the Ghostbusters video, that, slanted flat top hair thing.
Yes.
And I think he holds his own more than I would expect.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he does a pretty good job. You can tell in that first scene where it's the three guys just in the apartment. It's almost like he's waiting to say the line and he's trying to like be himself but cool, but it's not. And then he's like, wait, ugly girls. And then he comes back like.
Yeah, a lot of times these guest appearances tend to be written in a way that's very sort of, for one, easy for the non-actor, musicians to pull off, and also just sort of flattering. So a lot of times it's like you get to be the straight man and just be kind of cool, and everyone around you is going to be crazy, and you're just going to react to them. We'll give you a few easy lines to say, and that's pretty much what happens here. But for some reason, something about Bobby Brown, well, first of all, let me pause and ask this, because I intentionally didn't look into this. Bobby Brown is one of those celebrities that I can't remember if he's alive or dead. Is he alive or dead?
He's alive. Yeah, Bobby Brown's
and
alive and
54.
well. And he's 54.
Yeah. Okay. So internet has told us he's alive and actually younger than we thought. He's only 54. But anyway, my point was going to be just that Bobby Brown has had kind of a rough life. Of course, he's famously married to Whitney Houston, and there's all kinds of craziness there. And he had the bad boy attitude. His big hit song was My Prerogative. I'll do whatever the hell I want to do. So I was just kind of braced for like somebody that would kind of be like, don't tell me to memorize a line, or just like a little bit of a train wreck. And it's not that at all.
Oh,
like, he's fine.
Not at all. He was totally fine. He was, charming, funny, did all the things you wanted him to do.
He comes in, there's, a lot of stuff in this penthouse apartment of just everyone kind of falling over themselves in different ways to Bobby Brown. And then, like you said, after we get through this and that, it's revealed that Bobby Brown didn't want to narrow it down to 5 kids in his music video. He wanted to have the whole class there.
And this is when Brenda gets caught.
Right. Because it's revealed that her plagiarized essay has not been updated since the 70s when it was originally written.
So the mom comes back up, she comes upstairs and she's like, what the hell is this? You stole my essay. And then she looks at the teacher, and I'll get to you in a minute about the C+.
Yeah.
And Regina King is like, I'm so sorry, and I shouldn't have done it, and I know it, and whatever. And the teacher is like, yeah, there was nothing in this essay about the last 25 years. There was nothing about immigration.
Yes, she gets caught. She gets a punishment that does not involve not getting to be in the video. She says instead, the mom says you have to write 3 essays about each one of the things you did wrong, right? One is procrastination, one is plagiarism, and what's the last one?
Yeah, one is about procrastination, one is about passing off somebody else's work as your own, and the other is about honesty or something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
Shoot.
I'm trying to remember.
Now I'm bummed I can't remember that either.
But yeah, she has to write 3 different essays, and then we get to the actual video shoot where not only has Brenda been allowed to participate in it, she somehow got the key featured role
of course,
here.
because she is the lead of the show. So she gets to dance next to Bobby Brown and get down, and it's great.
The Bobby Brown video is amazing in the sense that it is very, very funny to watch. I'm going to say this is a pretty ill-conceived concept for a video. Bobby Brown, famous bad boy of hip hop, is singing a song. I'm not familiar with this particular song, but the line he's saying is, "Girl, I need you by my side." It's that kind of song. Why is the concept shooting this in a classroom with a bunch of children? This just seems like a really bizarre match for the song. You've got all of the kids, their desks are in a big circle around the room, the way you would do in a classroom if you're like, we're all going to share our stories or doing some exercise like that. And he's dancing in the middle.
Still pretty young. He would have been 20. So he would have just been 1989. He's sort of just out of New Edition, just kind of
fair enough.
So he definitely, that's his
he's
the
a
high
young
school kids.
guy.
And he's very young. I mean, he looks super young in this.
It's still it's just hard. I guess what you have to remembers that a lot of the music videos at this time were just like, we're going to shoot you performing the song in this setting and in this other setting and in this other setting. And then we're going to cut them all together and that'll be the video.
That's right.
You know?
And we'll have like some sort of fun effects over it and like spray paint stuff on top of the screen.
So I guess that's the idea. Like, we'll just shoot you singing and dancing in this classroom and then we'll make that part of this larger thing. But it seems like such a bizarre concept for this video, dancing in a classroom, you know, with like 3 or 4 teenagers dancing with you. Lots of Running Man, lots of those early 90s
but I don't think
dances.
it's supposed to be a good video. I think it was just because this was the like part of the show.
I know, but that just, to me, it opens up so many questions. If Bobby Brown is presented to us as being this sort of cool guy and, you know, a sort of shrewd musician, why would he do this? Why would he agree for this to be his next video? It's just so funny to me. Like, just the knowing what his video...
You're trying to put way too much logic to a guest
just
spot.
knowing what his videos actually were, like being familiar with the Every Little Step video, the My Prerogative video.
Instead of dancing in a classroom, they're dancing in a warehouse.
Yeah, I guess. So, yeah, look, in terms of tracking the trope, again, you've got this idea that we're going to see repeated very closely in the next one, the making a video thing, but more generally the idea of like crossing paths, you know, that some sort of famous person or some exciting celebrity, you know, comes into your orbit and, like I said, kind of shakes things up and everybody sort of has their own reaction to that. All right, let's move on to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Season 2, episode 11, The Butler Did It.
Yeah, so our guest stars on this one are going to be Bell Biv DeVoe. We just did Bobby Brown, so I think we need to do the public service here of breaking down New Edition and the East Coast Family and the whole complex system here, right? You had New Edition in the 80s.
Early 80s, right?
So I wasn't really familiar with them. I sort of learned about them retroactively. That was Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, Mike, Ralph, and Johnny, right?
That's a lot of kids.
It's Ronnie DeVoe, Bobby Brown, Ricky Bell, Mike Bivens, Ralph Tresvant, Johnny Gill.
Look at you. You just did, ladies and gentlemen and NBs, he did that without notes.
Yeah, it's because of the song where they will reference it all the time. They go, Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, Mike, Ralph, Johnny, too.
But you know their last names as well.
Because, so Bobby Brown went on to a, you know, successful career on his own. We all know him. Johnny Gill also had a successful solo career, but not quite as much.
Right.
But he was a thing. Ralph Tresvant, same thing, but a little lower down in the fame factor. And then you got the other guys, Ronnie, Bobby, and Ricky.
They were Bell Biv DeVoe.
Bell Biv DeVoe. And then Bell Biv DeVoe formed the East Coast Family, which was the 3 of them as Bell Biv DeVoe. ABC, Another Bad Creation, which was like 7 kids, like children.
It was like a new version of New Edition a little bit later on that had a bunch of young kids.
Yes, Bobby Brown was not like 5 when he was in New Edition. And
it
these
was
kids
kind of
were
like
really
it was
young.
like Menudo. Like
yes.
right, you had kids that were like from 5 until 13 or something.
And they would go on to have a feud with Kriss Kross, so we'll get to them. But so, and Boys to Men was the final ingredient in the East Coast Family. So a lot going on here, but BBD, as we called them, Bell Biv DeVoe, looking back on it now, they're essentially a one-hit wonder. Their big song was Poison.
Not to be confused with your BVDs.
Right, yes, which I did not. For years, I thought people were talking about Bell Biv DeVoe when they would mention their BVDs. But yeah, they had other songs like Do Me, which I used to put on in the car with my parents driving.
But wait a minute, that song is directly referenced in this show.
Oh yeah, don't think that was lost on me.
Because, and I didn't know that until just this very moment. Yes. Uncle Phil and Aunt Vivian go away in this episode for a weekend and they stay in the Do Me in.
Yes. Do Me was the follow-up single to Poison, which was the big hit single that everyone still remembers from Bell Biv DeVoe. So, yeah, look, all that's to say that I was definitely into the Bell Biv DeVoe movement. I remember all of this. I would put on that album that had all those super sexual songs on car trips with my parents, you know, when I was like 11, and just be like, yeah, this is what music is like. I don't know. So, of course, I was excited when they showed up on this Fresh Prince episode.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, we're going to have basically a retread of the party when the parents are away type plot.
But this time it's not Will.
No, this time Carlton he has assumed the role of acting adult in charge because Carlton has this master plan where he says, you know, it's not about throwing a party per se.
It's all profit.
Yeah, we're going to rent out our house for a music video shoot, which I guess is a thing you could do, especially if you live in California. And he says we're going to make $5,000. It'll be pure profit, and we'll clean everything up by the time our parents get home on Monday. So it is a rare reversal for Carlton to be the one with the crazy plan.
Right. Will is actually following the rules. He's having like a friend sleepover, and that's the extent of his, you know, having people over when the parents aren't home. But yeah, so the video is happening, and he comes downstairs in the morning in his PJs, and the whole place is like enveloped in a smoke machine fog.
Yeah, it's a whole different place.
And they have curtains up everywhere. These like, you know, sort of sheer kind of flowy curtains everywhere. And they have this big couch that's in the center that's replaced the normal couch. That's like one of those Ottoman style couches, right? It's like a poof, you know, yeah. And it's bright red and it spirals up to the top, but it has a very little place to sit. It's just more of an art piece than it is really something to sit on.
Yeah, and I feel like until this point, we haven't revealed who the musician's going to be, right? It's been a surprise.
Right.
Yeah, Carlton just says, you know, I'm renting out the house for a video. So yeah, the scene starts, you know, they start the playback, they start having music, and the three of them, Ronnie, Ricky, and Mike, come strutting into the living room and start, you know, rapping along with their song, and Will and his friend Todd start freaking out and jumping into the shot. But I just want to stop for a second and talk about this song, because I feel like this is the same thing that happened with the Bobby Brown ones. When you have these acts that are like a little bit of a flash in the pan, right? Their album is already out.
Right.
By the time that they're booking these guest appearances on these sitcoms and stuff. So the Bobby Brown song, I don't know what song that was. That wasn't familiar to me. But this song that Bell Biv DeVoe starts singing, Gangsta, I do remember this song, and this is not on their original album Poison. This was like a follow-up.
Right.
And the truth is they were already slipping
yeah.
at this time, you know, even though it's so soon after they hit the scene. And so this song, I liked it. Like it's kind of gimmicky. It has these like machine gun sounds and stuff. But I remember taking to this song and getting the single and everything, but this did not end up being like a hit on the radio or anything. And it was sort of like the last we heard from Bell Biv DeVoe.
Yeah. Well, so Will and his friend come downstairs and they're trying to get into the video, and they're in their PJs, which is kind of adorable.
Yeah.
And they get kind of pushed off to the side, and the director, who's a working actor you'd recognize, he's in a bunch of stuff. He's like, hey guys, you know, come on, we're burning daylight here. Let's go. Carlton's like, yeah, man, you know, have some chill, get out of the video. And then Hillary comes down, and the guys, like the Bell Biv DeVoe guys, they stop and they're like, oh, Hillary, good to see you. So that messes up another take.
Yeah, it's the joke of like any celebrity in town probably knows Hillary.
Right. Well, and she's like, sorry, guys, I can't stay and be in the video. Like you asked me, I have a shoe sale. And they're like, you got to do what you got to do. And she's like, I know, I should really take a vacation. And so then she leaves, and then they start again. And then the Girl Scout troop comes in.
Oh, yeah. We haven't talked about that.
So Ashley and her little Girl Scout troop, they've been trying to sell cookies throughout this whole episode. They come in from wherever they were, and they see what's going on, and they run and scream and hug the guys because they're like, oh my gosh, it's these famous musicians that we like. And then they get pulled off. So that's another take ruined. And then now we're okay. We really got to get this done. We really got to get this done. And then Will and his friends start dancing and trying to get in the middle of the video again, like randomly instead of like.
It's very funny. We hear the first, 30 seconds of this song, Gangster, like 17 times.
Yes.
They keep playing it over and over again. And I'm going to make the same observation I did about the Bobby Brown thing. This is a bizarre concept for a video. And again, I think you just have to buy into like, oh, they just made these videos. They would shoot them performing the song in different places and cut it together. But
that's what this one really looks like that. The Bobby Brown one, I just kind of am like, whatever, it's not real. Like this actually looks like it would be,
but here's the thing.
They are like coming through a curtain and they're doing like the beginning of this song and then they're just kind of like playing up to the camera and that's it.
Three women.
Oh yeah, that's the dancers
walk in after them, but it just looks so weird. You have them come into this curtain and start singing the song to the camera. And then behind them, these three women file into the room and just lift their hands in the air and start doing that sort of generic dancing kind of thing. But yeah, it's just like, this is like, what is this? Like, what am I looking at? Just like three guys rapping with these three ladies just kind of randomly moving around behind them in a living room?
But that's not what it looks like. It's all covered in, it looks like probably like a whorehouse more than anything else because it's got these weird lights and like everything's red and it's like smoky and they're shooting them from really low, like the camera guy is down on his knees like shooting
90s.
up, and so they're just, I think it's just a shot, they're just getting a few shots of them in this like fancy house that is all kind of smoky and curtainy and stuff.
It would be less weird to me without the ladies. I think if it were just the three guys rapping, I would say, oh, okay, it's an interesting looking locale and they're performing the song.
See, and it would be weird to me if there weren't ladies because
they're not.
It's like a video. You always have hot girls in the background.
But they're not doing a choreographed dance, nor are they just hanging out.
That's more of a now thing. They are just hanging out. They're walking in and like, oh yeah, it's a party. I'm just kind of getting down to the music.
I guess that's what it's supposed to be, just like a party vibe.
But no, they're not doing like a Megan Thee Stallion, like.
Yes, this is not going to show up on, David Fincher or Michelle Gondry's music video reel.
Well, of course not. So anyway, now the video's been interrupted multiple times and we find out that all the furniture that's normally in the living room is in the backyard, even though it could have just gone somewhere else in the house. They moved it all into the backyard. And then as soon as they said that, I was like, oh, it's going to rain. Yeah. And right on cue, thunder, lightning. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? They're done with the video shoot. They all start rushing to get the furniture back in.
Well, and that was a super sitcom-y contrivance when the director was like, all right, we just have one more shot and then we'll be out of your hair. And it's like, wait a minute. You just did like 17 takes and didn't even get that one thing that you were trying to get. Now you only have one more shot to do in this location. Like, it just seems strange to me that their whole itinerary was like, let's get one shot of Bell Biv DeVoe singing in front of this doorway.
You're thinking too much about it.
and then we're done.
Well, but also, we come in the middle of it because they had been, Carlton has been awake for hours, already has his clipboard and is all like going around.
I think that's what I didn't get, because that part that you're saying where Will and Todd, his friend, come downstairs and everything's already underway, I was incredulous about that too. Like, did this film crew sneak in the middle of the night and set all this up? But I think you're right. I think we understand they slept late, and so this has been going all day.
Right.
So yeah, the thing, again, much like what often happens in a party while the parents are away type episode, they get the phone call, Will answers the phone, party, what does he say?
That's
party
right.
Machine.
Party palace or something like that. And Aunt Viv's like, what's that music? What's going on?
Yeah, it's Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv calling from their hotel. They've been having this whole crazy B-plot, like you said, with their getaway, and they're calling to say, we're coming home early. We'll be there tonight instead of tomorrow.
And that was very nice of them to warn them.
Yeah.
So Will passes on this information to Carlton. They start freaking out. That's when the thunder and lightning happens. Then they realize, oh my God, all the furniture is ruined. So they were going to make $5,000 from doing this, and the guy is, the director is giving him the money. So they were like, Hillary, go cash that check, use half of the money to go buy a new couch because the couch is ruined. We'll figure out what to do with the rug and the floors and everything else.
And they assign Ashley to paint the walls.
That's right.
So yeah, that's Ashley's job. Carlton is in charge of buffing, right? This is something I remember from watching this when I was a kid, where they have the Buff-O-Matic and Carlton is going like, let's read the manual and, and see the proper steps here. And so it starts, okay, page 1, welcome to the wonderful world of buffing. And Will is like, no, we don't need to read all this. Look, let's just plug it in and see what happens. And it goes and drives itself out into the swimming pool. But yeah, everybody's got their own job to do. And it's your classic Ferris Bueller type thing. We need to get the house back in shape before the parents come home.
Right. And it turns out that couch is actually a $5,000 couch when you include the delivery fee, which they have to pay because they don't have a vehicle that can deliver this giant couch. So Hillary first comes home with a love seat that's like half the size of the normal couch.
Will goes, I think Uncle Phil will notice when he gets up and his butt's stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah, when the couch is still stuck to his butt because it was a much smaller version of the couch.
Yeah, Ashley is still painting like minutes before they get home. And this is something, just as somebody who has tried to clean up my apartment and paint over dirty windowsills and stuff on the same day that I've got company coming over, I can tell you,
don't touch the window.
Yeah, you've got to leave a few hours for the smell of wet paint to dissipate.
I'm going to need to hear the story of you painting before you had company coming over.
No, it just, sometimes, like white painted windowsills, they get so crappy that you just go like, it's easier to just slather a quick coat of white paint on this than to try to like clean it in any other way.
I have never experienced this. You are a dirty, dirty man.
And so, yeah, I'm watching her do that, going like, all right, not only is the paint going to be wet, but the house is going to reek of paint for hours. And the show addresses one of those concerns because Phil and Vivian come home and it's one of those like, okay, looks like you kids did a good job. The house is in order. And of course, I immediately noticed that Uncle Phil is leaning against
the wet paint wall. Same, yeah.
Right. So, all right, they're not accounting for the fact that it's going to smell like wet paint. But dollars to donuts, we're going to get a paint on the back of the coat gag, and that's exactly what happens. That's the last little button when Phil and Vivian go up to bed, and we see that he's still got the paint on his back.
And the kids all go, you get you get this and I'll get that. And they all run like they scatter because they know they're going to get caught as soon as he takes off his coat when he goes upstairs.
Exactly. So look, scenario is very much standard sitcom stuff. Let's do something we're not really supposed to do while the parents are away and all the fun stuff that we didn't really talk about that happens in the hotel with Vivian and Phil. But yeah, in terms of tracking the trope, same stuff, right? It's like we don't have as much of the anticipation because it's not revealed that Bell Biv Devoe is going to be the musician. So we don't have all of that like, oh, I have all of their albums and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's still that thing of we're shooting a video.
And they get that moment of fame, right? Where the screaming girls and then the guys too are like, whoa, they're famous. So you get both of those like, celebrity moments.
Yes. And I think in both cases, there's a little bit of that naivete that you have to just sort of roll with of like, yeah, major recording artists shoot music videos in a random classroom in a real school or somebody's living room or something like that. Like, I guess stranger things have happened.
I think they do that.
Yeah, like I said, in both cases, the music videos just seem strange to me. All right, moving on to Drexell's class.
Season 1, because they only had the one, episode 17, Cruisin, with special guest Digital Underground.
Yeah, Digital Underground was not one that I was as into as these other groups. We all remember the Humpty Dance, right?
Sure.
That was a huge song and still has a presence in karaoke and silly situations and stuff. I knew them also from their guest appearance in the movie Nothing But Trouble, which is a terrible movie directed by Dan Aykroyd and starring Dan Aykroyd with a prosthetic penis nose. I was kind of into Drexell's class. We did watch this when I was a kid. I remember
Well, and this was like, I mean, again, it's one of these Fox shows. I didn't even know of its existence when we were doing research for this trope. And I was like, what's Drexell's class, Jay? So I look it up. Dude, starring AJ Langer, who is the best friend from My So-Called Life.
Rayanne from My So-Called Life.
Brittany Murphy from Clueless and a million and one other things as a child. And also, not in this episode, but Jason Biggs from American Pie.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. But yeah, and of course, the star of this show, the titular Mr. Drexell, is Dabney Coleman, who's another one of these guys, like, if you are 10 minutes younger than us, you have never heard of this guy. But he was a pretty prominent actor in the 80s and 90s. Like, I don't know what his big thing was.
Well, he was in Tootsie.
Okay.
He always plays these, like, businessmen that are down on their luck in some way or sort of bad.
Yeah, by the time that we were experiencing him, I think, the movies that I know him from, he's already sort of a little bit beyond what initially made him famous, and he's always playing the stuffy or crooked guy in the suit. So yes, he's in The Muppets Take Manhattan as the crooked producer that wants to buy their Broadway show and just rips them off. And so that's where I most recognized him from.
There you go. No, absolutely. And so in this, he also plays that same kind of character. The setup for this show that I now know about, that I'd never heard about before today, was he had gotten involved in some scheme and he didn't pay taxes and he'd swindled some people out of money. And so his punishment isn't going to jail, it's to go teach at an understaffed school.
This is literally the sitcomiest sitcom premise that ever sitcomed. Like,
yes.
The judge sentences you to be a teacher.
To be a teacher, and he is a divorced dad who has sole custody of his two girls. That's played by AJ Langer and Brittany Murphy. And so he is in Iowa at a school that is short-staffed, and the principal is another very recognizable guy.
Oh, yeah, Dakin Matthews.
Dakin Matthews.
Beloved character actor. He's also a Broadway guy.
Right. We saw him in Camelot just recently.
Yes. I've seen him in real life in the Food Emporium when I used to live close to Times Square. He was in Rocky the Musical, I think. And yeah, he's great in True Grit, the Coen Brothers remake. He just shows up in tons of things.
He's in tons of stuff. Anyway, he's not the principal. He is another teacher. Mm-hmm. And he's like a foe. Like the two of them don't really get along, which is funny because they do kind of always play that same kind of guy. So anyway, those are the main kind of teacher characters. And then there's another teacher. There's an actor I didn't recognize. So this episode had this like weird feeling of a fever dream. So it starts with Jason Priestley.
Yes. And you realize it is a fever dream.
Well, we find out that later,
yes.
But we don't know that.
Right. So, yes, setting aside that knowledge, yes, it begins with Jason Priestley playing a priest.
Right.
So
playing a teen priest.
Yes.
He's on a show called Teen Priest.
This is very funny. This is going to be another trope. I call it the Johnny Dakota thing. If you remember from Saved by the Bell, Johnny Dakota is a fake celebrity in the fictional world that, comes to their school for whatever reason. And then turns out he's an asshole. And it's like, don't ever meet your heroes. In real life, the celebrities are creeps.
They're the worst.
Yeah. And this is very much going to be one of those types of scenarios. But yeah, talk about your 90s time capsule. This has got to be season 1 or 2 of 90210. Jason Priestley. He is young, fresh-faced. And yes, this is very much mocking that idea of the teen idol.
Oh my God. And the girls are just watching the show. The two daughters are watching his show, Teen Priest, and they are just like, oh my God. I mean, he is like Tiger Beat to a T. Everybody's all about him. And the dad's like, who is this guy? Whatever. And then we hear about the scheme. So he's got a new scheme where they can go on a vacation. They get to go on a cruise, he and his girls, if he convinces 10 suckers to buy a ticket to go on this cruise. He goes, I've made a shady deal with the travel agent.
Yeah, he says a semi-shady deal with a real estate agent.
With a travel agent.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah, to be able to do this thing. So he has convinced 9 people. He needs one more. And his oldest daughter, Melissa, played by AJ Langer, she dates this guy named Slash, who's an idiot and looks exactly like Anthony Kiedis.
Yes, this is very
of the
much
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Modeled after Anthony Kiedis from the Chili Peppers, who were around, I think. Again, we're talking early 90s, so you hadn't had that.
No, this is definitely Under the Bridge Downtown.
Yes, you
like,
hadn't had
time.
that takeover yet where it's like the hip hop is totally gone and the grunge rock has completely taken over. But Chili Peppers are definitely one of the original bands of that time. And they were, they were absolutely like in the consciousness already.
But he was named Slash like Guns N' Roses, but looked like Anthony Kiedis, new music, right? Okay, so he is the last sucker. He's like, hey, I just got 2 weeks back pay. I have $400 to go on the cruise. Great. Now they're all going to go on the cruise. So we find out that the other suckers he's suckered into this cruise are his fellow teachers.
Yeah, they're just the other characters of the show.
Right. It's a bunch of these other, like his fellow teachers, and then some of his students randomly, like some of his students' parents.
Yeah.
So they're all on the cruise, and they figure out within a few minutes of being on the cruise that there's a bunch of celebrities on this cruise. Number one, the Digital Underground is the entertainment in the cabaret. So we get this whole great scene with one of the kids from the class and Humpty, where he's like, Humpty, I'm your biggest fan. Look, I even carry the nose around. And he puts on the like Groucho Marx glasses and nose. And Humpty makes the joke like, hey, it's the wrong color, but you just got to fix the tint a little bit. And Tupac goes, come on, man, sign his nose. And so he signs his little Humpty nose, and then off they go.
Yeah, this is basically all we're going to get in terms of the hip hop guest star acting. Or interacting with the characters. Yes, we're going to get a performance later. But yeah, we get, again, like I said, they're written to come across as cool and nice and not give them any super hard acting challenges or anything, so there's not really much to say about it, but it's definitely fun seeing super young Tupac and Humpty interacting.
Well, and this was what was so clear in this like time capsule of an episode is that nobody knew, like Tupac clearly wasn't the famous one in the Digital Underground, and nobody knew that he was this amazing actor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, we know from, what was it, like Poetic Justice or whatever it was called, that he went on.
I can't confirm or deny amazing actor.
He went to a performing arts school. He went to like the Fame School of LA.
He's in Juice. He's in several movies. Yeah, I'm just saying I haven't formed an opinion of his acting one way or another.
And I mean, I guess I can't say that I have either. I just know that he grew up, with Jada Pinkett Smith, right?
Sure.
She tells the story in every interview that they were like best friends their whole lives, but they went to this performing arts high school in LA. So he has like Jamie Foxx, that same kind of performer background that's separate from his like gangster rap image that he made. Yeah. Not tried to, that he successfully made.
I think when you get fatally shot in a gang situation, you can claim to have
claim it, yes.
Some authenticity.
I'm not trying to step
Tupac
to
was
his
a poser.
cred. I'm not trying to step to his cred at all. No.
I'm more gangster than Tupac. Bring it on. Obviously, we will be cutting all of that out. Moving right along.
That's fucking perfect. You should leave it in.
So, but you are right that Tupac is very much one of the other guys in Digital Underground. And yeah, they have this fun little scene. He signs his nose and says like, hey, little guy, keep it cool or whatever.
Yeah.
And they kind of move along with the episode. And then we get, a few scenes later when we come back from a commercial, like a full-on performance where the show, and sitcoms like to do this a little bit like our John Stamos performance on TGIF.
That's right.
A few minutes ago. A few minutes of content without having to write a script or shoot anything else. bring it on.
Go for it.
Yeah, we get this performance of Digital Underground singing a song that is probably called No Nose Job or something along those lines. It's all about how he doesn't want to get a nose job.
No, but it's all about like plastic surgery in general. He says white girls think their butts are too flat or hips are too skinny, and black girls think their hips are too fat, and then white girls think their lips are too thin, but black girls think their lips are too big. So it's like this whole thing about...
Well, in the 90s was the rise of plastic surgery, nose jobs, boob jobs.
Yeah, and he's basically just saying like, everyone's beautiful, stop doing that, is like the message of the song.
Yeah, we get the performance. This is where I started realizing I can spot a Fox show a mile away. You know, there's something about this time period. They're always shot on video. This was contemporaneous with In Living Color. And so just the fact that you would have this hip hop act do this guest spot on the show, sort of apropos of nothing, just sort of like, hey, they just walked over, you know, they were hanging out with the In Living Color guys and they just walked down the hall and stopped by this set. Like, there's just something about the overall sensibility of these Fox shows in the early 90s that is just very much its own thing.
Yeah. And I had no idea that this was a Fox show, but I couldn't figure out why I didn't know it. And so then I was like, oh, that's why I don't know it.
So yeah, that's really all we're going to get from Digital Underground. The focus of the story is going to be that AJ Langer's character, Melissa, is going to sort of strike up a little romance with Jason Priestley, who is playing Johnny Andreas. So again, not that different from Johnny Dakota from Saved by the Bell. But the whole thing is going to be that Drexell, who is this schemer, this con man, he's going to shift his focus to, I'm going to try to get a photo, basically, like a photo for a tabloid magazine. Again, in the 90s, this was not the birth, but a big ascent of this sort of supermarket tabloid culture. This was a little bit before like TMZ and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, this was very much a sort of hot button idea of we're going to get a photo of Jason Priestley or Johnny Andreas with a mystery woman on this cruise.
Yes. And so he calls some tabloid to try to get money, and he gets an agreement from the tabloid that he'll get $30,000 if he gets a photo of Johnny Andreas kissing the mystery woman he brought on board.
Yeah.
Well, also on board are a whole slew of what they call the Sports Digest swimsuit models.
That's funny.
Yep. So they were he pays like two of them to try to corner Johnny Andreas and get him, kiss him. But then it turns out that this guy, Jason Priestley's character is super into his daughter. And so he's like, oh, wait. But then he's like, oh, but wait a minute. Maybe I can get a picture of them kissing. So like, what a shitty dad.
Oh, yeah. I did not remember this as part of the premise of Drexell's class. I just thought this was another head of the class knockoff. But no, I guess the stories all revolve around the fact that this guy is like kind of an asshole and has these like criminal tendencies.
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to focus on for a second is AJ Langer, because she, we don't talk about her as much as Nicole Eggert, but she was a huge one.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
For me.
Yes.
Yeah, she really is just like has this sort of like perfect, like if you want that kind of quote unquote girl next door sort of waspy type look. She's
like mouse-like, right? She's got those tiny little features and she's got this big hair.
Well, yeah. And for me, the 1-2 punch was My So-Called Life on MTV and the movie The People Under the Stairs, which is this Wes Craven movie, super weird, great horror movie from the early 90s where she plays this, sort of battered child who is imprisoned by these crazy murderous parents. And so she was just a very, she loomed large for me when I was a, young teenager as just a pretty celebrity girl that I liked. And so, it's just, tidal wave of nostalgia for her being in this role. I didn't know like what she did prior to My So-Called Life.
Well, and they definitely have the Fox thing of like, we don't care that she's a teenager. She's going to be talking about having sex. She's going to be in her bikini. She's going to be, you know, two-timing, and her dad's not going to care either. He's going to care more about like getting the pictures of her than he is his own daughter, you know, having these relations with these two different men.
And she is a Seinfeld girlfriend to AJ Langer, which I remember at that time being like, I don't know about this. I think of AJ Langer as like,
isn't she too young for that?
And Seinfeld being like a grown-up dude that's much older.
Yeah, but I mean, he ended up in real life marrying somebody like 20 years younger than us, so whatever.
She was one of the younger girlfriends on that probably, but I don't think it's super scandalous. But anyway, it's all about them having this little romance where Jason Priestley as Johnny whatever starts to convince her like, no, what I really like is a nice girl, and I'm not really
I'm from Minnesota, and this is all just Hollywood
too, because I'm pretty sure Brandon and Brenda were from Minnesota in
in 90210.
It's all about them moving to Beverly Hills. But so there's a moment where he kisses her hand, and I wanted to just pause on that for a second. Is that in the 90s, or now for that matter, is that still a thing? Unironically kissing a woman's hand, like Lancelot style?
I mean, he was revealed that was all an act. So I think that was just meant he was doing that because he was like playing.
He's overdoing it, I guess. But she, the character, and we, the audience, don't know that yet.
No, but also, I mean, look, there's this thing of like when the like Prince Charming guy comes to sweep you off your feet, and that's what he's leaning into.
So, okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, if somebody does that, it's immediate cause for suspicion. Nobody is going to be doing that and actually turn out to be a good guy.
I don't think so. I mean, you know what? Where it might you might get away with it, but I still think it's a red flag. Maybe it's what they call now a beige flag, is European guys.
Yeah, they've got their own set of rules. It has that sort of roller coaster where they get close. He says, you know, I'm really a nice guy or whatever. All the while, Drexell is lurking, behind a
lounge chair. And he like, every time they have a break in the conversation that's quiet, he like pops his head up and crawls to one lounge chair closer. He's already lost the nice camera because he sent one of his other students to go and get a picture earlier. Now he's got this Polaroid camera, which is going to have a flash. Yeah. So I don't know how he's going to take this picture. But so Jason Priestley leans in for a kiss, and he pops up from behind the lounge chair and takes a picture. And she turns around and is like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he's like, "That's your dad?" And it's like, oh no, this is how it's going to go south. And then the bodyguard runs out and starts to hang him over the edge, try to shake the camera out of his hand.
Malcolm, the gigantic bodyguard. He kind of looks like Rocky from Rocky Horror Picture Show, but much wider and bulkier.
He reminds me of the guy from Coach.
Oh, sure. Yeah, like that guy. Yeah, almost like a Hulk Hogan looking guy. Anytime somebody threatens Jason Priestley or does something objectionable, he holds them over the side of the boat like he's going to throw him overboard, and that's what he does this time.
Right. So he doesn't want to give back the picture, and he's got it tucked away, and Jason Priestley's like, you know what? It's fine. And does this whole like acting thing of like, if you guys want to keep the picture, then you do that. And I understand because it's hard, life is hard and whatever. I'll just go back to my life, whatever. He does this whole big dramatic thing. And so, Drexell feels bad. And he's like, here you go. Just, take the picture. It's fine. And he's like, ha! Jason Priestley's like, I grew up in Beverly Hills, you idiot. Yeah. And then like storms off and takes the picture with him.
Yeah. And he
throws it over the edge.
Yeah. And he goes, Malcolm, let's get a couple of bimbos and get on the chopper.
That's right.
So yes, just total disillusionment. So then Drexell wakes up and realizes this was all a dream, right? He wakes up getting CPR from Dakin Matthews. And
he jumps over
to get the picture. Okay.
And there's this whole hubbub. And in his dream now, it's one of the sexy swimsuit models giving him mouth to mouth to wake him up. And then as he wakes up, it's Dakin Matthews. You thought we were going to talk about 4 shows from the 90s and not get a Gay Panic reference. What are you talking about? This is our moment of, oh my God, I would rather be dead. That's what he says than, get mouth to mouth from Dakin Matthews. That's right.
So we get that brief homophobic thing.
Now he's on the couch. So we have this zoom in of the mouth to mouth kind of fading into being his coworker instead of the swimsuit model. And then we zoom out and he's on his couch and there was a gas leak and the girls had been watching a show or something.
Yeah, but this is weird because, like I said, it's revealed to be a dream, but the whole episode was a dream from the very first frames. The existence of this Jason Priestley character, this teen priest character,
is fake.
Is a dream, which really breaks the rules that we established in our dreams episode. When you have something like this, TV show, movie, or whatever, there's always a point at the beginning where the person falls asleep.
Right, you have the real moments.
Exactly. And then at the end you realize, oh, that point there when he nodded off in class, everything since then was a dream. But this does away with that. It's just, no, everything you've seen was
they
fake.
say something, and now I don't remember what it was that they said, but it was like, oh, hey, you fell asleep before we got home or something like that, or we had gone out and you fell asleep. And when we came home, we found you like this. But yeah, the repairmen are here now. And he wakes up and the repairmen are Jason Priestley and Humpty Hump. Yes. And so he's like, wait, in my dream, he does the whole Wizard of Oz thing. You were there and you were there.
Yep.
And then as they leave and everyone's leaving him alone, he's like, I think I need to sleep more. Wow, this was crazy. He reaches in his shirt pocket and he pulls out the Polaroid of his daughter kissing the hot priest, Jason Priestley.
Because Jason Priestley's character in this episode has Freddy Krueger powers. In Nightmare on Elm Street, if you are physically touching something in your dream when you wake up, you will be holding that object, like Freddy's hat or Freddy himself. And
so
that's
Jason
how you defeat
Priestley
him.
has Freddy Krueger powers, or are you saying he dove into the water and got the picture and that's how he
I
had
guess
it?
I'm saying that Drexell's Class as a show plays by Nightmare on Elm Street rules, where if you're holding something in your dream, when you wake up, you have it in material reality.
Do you think that this was an idea that came from A.J. Langer in her experience with Wes Craven?
Wow, now you're talking. I'm pretty sure this was before that, but yeah, maybe she was anticipating. I don't know, but yeah, this scene is wild because already we're trying to calibrate okay, so
it felt like a fever dream all the way through.
Yes.
No kidding. And so when it turned out to be, I was like, okay, whew, because this was a hell of an episode otherwise.
Well, just the notion that, okay, initially we're in a world where Jason Priestley, the actor, does not exist. Beverly Hills 90210, the show, does not exist. He is a man named Johnny Aurora or whatever, and he's in Teen Priest.
Andre.
But Digital Underground, the band, does exist.
Yes.
Now, in the quote-unquote real world, these are just a couple plumbers. So Humpty Hump and the Digital Underground was something that Drexell made up in his dream? Or Digital Underground really exists and his repairman just happens to look just like Humpty Hump.
With the same fake glasses and nose.
Yeah, exactly. It boggles the mind.
It was wild.
Obviously, you're not supposed to think about it that seriously, but it is
No,
funny.
it is no surprise that this show lasted one season only.
Yeah. I will say, again, the Fox network-ness of it is so clear. Just the way that you contrast it between the first two that we watched and this one. It's not like those other hip-hop artists, Bobby Brown and Bell Biv DeVoe, had a ton to do in those, but their presence was very much part of the story and woven in, and it's about, in this episode, we're going to try to do a music video or whatever, whereas this really did feel like, oh, we have access to Digital Underground for whatever reason. They'll agree to be on our show. We need to goose ratings a little bit. Let's get them. Like, it just feels so sort of random and haphazard,
Yeah, who knows?
So I think this is basically later on the same year. Let's move on to A Different World.
Season 6, episode 11, Original Teacher, featuring Kriss Kross.
Yeah, Kriss Kross is a big subject unto themselves, but A Different World. This is, I think, the first time we've talked about a sitcom 2 weeks in a row. We just did them for our beauty pageants episode, but this is much later in the run. And I love the revamped opening title sequence.
Oh, yeah. This is kind of the Different World I remember.
Yeah.
Right? Where you have Cree, whatever her last name is, as like the main girl, and Whitley and Dwayne Wayne are married now, and he's a teacher. Like this, I was like, yeah, this is what I remember, because I watched it later on, I guess.
And for this season, the open is this constant horizontal camera pan through these like areas where everything is painted the same color. This is a technique that has come back around again. You see this in commercials and stuff where you'll have a room or a setting and everything is the exact same shade of yellow or whatever it is. And all you see are details in the shading and everything. And so the camera keeps sliding through all of these situations and you're seeing these different sets and characters. And yeah, it just totally, like, it tells you the story of them getting married and everything. And it gives you the information you need. It sets the tone in terms of the style and everything. It's really cool.
Yeah. Great. And so the setup for this episode is Cree, the main character. So she came in after Lisa Bonet left. Her name's Cree Summer. She plays Freddie Brooks. And she became like the main character after season 1 when they retooled the show like we talked about last week. So she now has graduated from Hillman and she is a teacher or something like that. She works with kids. And there are these kids that are in a juvenile detention program, and they're getting like a week off of being in juvie to come to this historical Black university and get straightened out, basically, and introduced to a different world of, people of color than what they're used to. That's kind of the whole point of this. So everybody who's there is, all the men are supposed to be, they're supposed to take a youngster and be their mentor for the week.
Yeah, kind of like a big brother kind of thing.
Right.
Now, while we're on this subject, I noticed, I mentioned last time, I didn't really watch this show as a kid, but I was aware of it. It was on in syndication all the time. I would see the commercials. This Dwayne Wayne character, played by Kadeem Hardison, I knew him from the movie White Men Can't Jump, which I loved. I didn't understand like the archetype that he was. I remember as a kid seeing those glasses that he has, his signature double lens glasses or whatever.
The flip up sunglasses.
Right. And seeing that he was this sort of skinny guy, I kind of thought he was like a grown-up Urkel. Like, I thought he was a nerd, and that's what his thing was. And when I watch it now, I sort of understand, like, no, this is more about, like, normalizing that archetype of, like, the educated young Black man and the guy who's going to be like an activist and is, just like you're saying, going to really try to obliterate those stereotypes, which we ironically see quite at play in this episode.
This was so interesting.
Yeah.
Look, so there's so many things here to unpack, but Bill Cosby's whole deal for a while there was like going out and speaking to Black youth and being like, stop being gangbangers, you're ruining it for the rest of us.
Pull your pants up.
Right? He was like, and that was like his message. And this show executive produced by him, but directed and written by Debbie Allen, is trying to say that, but in a different way. It's not saying pull your pants up. It's saying you have a choice.
Yes.
And like, we'll be here to support you in the like educated Black community if you want to choose to rise up from what it is that you're living in right now. What is never addressed, which is something that we very much recognize today, is there's this whole metaphor that they do about like there being this ceiling, and even when the ceiling's taken off, the little, they called them they were talking about fleas in a jar, right? Mm-hmm. So the fleas in the jar don't realize that the lid has come off, and so that they could jump out and be free. And that's like the parable that Kadeem Harrison's character tells the two youths that he's trying to help rehabilitate. And that's like the thing that eventually helps them realize that they have different choices, right? So the line that this is trying to walk is that, right? And then what it doesn't acknowledge, though, which is something that in today's world we talk about all the time, that even when you think that lid is off, right? Even when it's like, yes, we live in America, land of opportunity, whatever, generational poverty and entrenched bias will hold people back no matter what. And the generational poverty and trauma is a thing.
Yeah, this is not coming at this from the angle of white privilege and all of the ways that poverty and lack of opportunity will deny people certain paths in life. This is coming from the point of view of, in the 90s, there was this term super predator that was thrown around.
Right.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Where even Bill Clinton, who is considered this, relatively liberal politician, was like sort of famously wrapped up in this, right? Like this notion that there is a new breed of young, urban psychopaths that are going to kill us all, and this is the kind of thinking that led to stop and frisk. This is, just this.
Well, it was because they're children of crack, right? Yeah. And so they were born high and their brains won't develop. That was the thinking.
And it is born out of the, real statistics that crime was on the rise throughout the 80s and into the 90s. And there were, safety issues in cities and stuff. But then it just got totally sort of blown out of proportion and turned into this spectacle.
Right. It was used as like a straw man to make white people who lived in white suburbs be scared.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention, yes, all of the different changes in policing and all kinds of implications and consequences for this kind of thinking. And so, just like you said, it is fascinating to see a show which in so many ways has its head and its heart in the right place and is showing all of these positive role models and breaking down stereotypes and everything. And at the same time is still caught up in the moral panic of the early 90s, or this sense of like, we may all be terrorized by these psychopathic youths.
Well, and it's gangs, right? They really are trying to show. So the beef, so like the two kids, obviously it's Kriss Kross, Chris Kelly and Chris Smith, who are the two kids from Kriss Kross. They are the two that Dwayne Wayne gets stuck with in the end, right? Because everybody's supposed to have one kid that they're mentoring, but then there was an extra kid who got thrown in at the last second. And so they were like, well, one of you lucky teachers gets to have two that you're mentoring. Because they have a
beef. The two of them are the only two that get to talk out of these 6 or 7 kids. And
they realize, that they're both from the opposite sides. Like one's from the 220, they're like made up gangs.
But here's the thing.
And one's from like Cambridge or whatever. And so they're like, these are our made up gangs that we are like our territory, your territory, and we hate each other.
Yeah, it's the 220 and Coolidge. But at first, I don't think that's what sets them off at first. They realize that in like their second confrontation in the classroom. I think at first it's like they're wearing the same hat or something. And he's like, oh you copping my style?
That's right.
So it's like they're just at odds because of everything.
Yeah.
And so, these two kids. Now let's just talk about Kriss Kross for a second. Now, if there is any hip hop artist that cements you in a particular point in time, it
and
is
will
them.
make you jump.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, not only can you tell what year it is from the fact that they have any relevance in culture, but because they're going through puberty right before our eyes, right?
Okay, so they are our age. They were born in 1979, a little bit earlier than you and I were, but like they would have been in the same grade as you.
Okay, so when they did Jump, right? The Mac Dad will make you jump, Kriss Kross will make you. They were kids. Like you could see they were visibly younger than they are in this episode, which I'm guessing was shot less than a year later.
This is 92. I was going to say, this is 92, so they were not that much older.
That's what I'm saying. They are at a point where with every passing month, you are seeing changes in them.
Right.
So yeah, I can tell watching this, because I remember this happening in real life. Jump came out. Then their follow-up single, I Missed the Bus. Not quite the same chart topper. Their next single did not exist.
No, that was this one, which is they sing at the end. It's called It's a Shame.
Yeah, fair enough. They had a very brief window of popularity. Like I said, I think they were a little bit of a response to Another Bad Creation, which was
in 7th grade.
Little kids. And yeah, they, like I said, one album, if that, and the fact that you could see them being just a little bit like older and brawnier, you know, than they were in those original music videos. It's like you could pinpoint to the week when this was made.
Because they're growing up so quickly, right before our eyes. So yeah, so they are like baby gangbangers. We find out kind of early on that they both ended up in juvie because they were riding with their cousins, and their cousins were committing some types of crimes, and they were left in the car because they were the young ones, and they ended up getting caught. Everybody got caught, and they ended up in jail too because they were along for the ride, which is a normal story. Like that is exactly how many people our age who are not of the same skin color ended up in jail in the first place way back when we were kids.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, just to think about the time and think about them being our age and all of that. I was like, wow. So that's their story, and they kind of share that moment. But then they immediately are like, well, they find out that the other one comes from the other side of the neighborhood, and they don't like that side of the neighborhood, or they're from the other territory. And they immediately are like, well, your homies killed my cousin. Yeah, well, your cousins tried to shoot my brother. And so I'm going to kill you. I'm going to come back here with a gun tomorrow. And they're just like at each other. I mean, they're ready to fight. And so Dwayne Wayne tries to separate them. He's trying to get them to focus on their project for the week, which is they have to do a presentation about some historical Black figure by the end of the week. He suggests
Jackie Robinson, and one of them says, who's she?
Right. And so he's like, oh my gosh. And so then he tells them about a famous Black inventor,
yes.
Garrett
A.
Morgan.
Morgan.
Yeah, Garrett Morgan, who invented the traffic light and a bunch of other things, gas masks and stuff. And they tease him about that the whole time because they're like not interested in that.
Yeah, Chris Smith wants to do the report on Steven Seagal.
That's right.
He's more into movies, but they love Steven Seagal, which just, again, bring on the early 90s time capsule stuff. Not Schwarzenegger, not Sylvester Stallone, Steven Seagal.
Specifically,
love it.
That's right. So, yeah, they are kind of showing their distaste for anything that is like upwardly mobile Black culture. They're like, no, not interested, only interested in what is kind of in my face on the day-to-day basis, like Steven Seagal, yeah? And then the other one is like, oh, if I could be anything, later on he's like, well, I'd be the garbage man, because the garbage man can block traffic for as long as he wants. And like, that's what his dream is just to like have so much power that nobody can get by me in the street until I say so, and just like the garbage man. And so that is kind of the beginning of them like beefing and not being able to get along right away. And then the next day, Dwayne Wayne says, all right, I'm going to get some of the other teachers to come in and try to, talk to you. And so he gets, I think it's like the cafeteria guy, the guy who runs like the diner. Yeah. And then the other guy who always wears the military uniform. And I forget I think he's a teacher at the school too. So they come and they've written this rap and they show up and they look like Flava Flav.
They're Flav and Humpty, right? That's what I took it to be. One of them is like Flav and the other one's like Humpty Hump.
But one of them has their clothes turned around backwards, which is like a Kriss Kross thing, right? So they come in and they have this whole rap and they're trying to perform it and say like, you think you have beef and all this stuff. And it is great.
Yes, it is ridiculous, but great. Yeah. And that doesn't impress them, right? And then we get the second guy who, this is where I started really writing down like, okay, this is super predator bullshit, where he starts talking about like, I went to Nam, I've had to kill, I've had my friends killed. I didn't think I would come home to worry about getting shot on the street. I didn't think that every kid would know how to fire an AK-47 before they learned how to ride a bicycle. Like we're getting this thing of like, oh my God, our country is falling apart because the children of today are murderous gangbangers.
Yeah. Or just they feel like that's the only thing they can be, right? So then Dwayne Wayne is like, all right, well, this hasn't made an impact either. I'm going to go to their homes.
Yes. Now we should also say they start throwing around the term OG, right? Original gangster. And it's funny because this is around when that got popularized, right? Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Ice-T is the original gangster.
Is that true?
I think that was a song of his and that he coined that term.
That he was the OG? I didn't know that.
I didn't confirm that. I may be wrong, but that's kind of what I think, which would have been in the early 90s. So that's just funny to me because you talk about the slang terms that have survived versus the ones that have fallen by the wayside. Now, a 4-year-old girl knows what you mean if you say, oh no, show me the OG Blues Clues. They'll understand that. So it's just kind of funny that at this time, all of these people at this historically black university are going, original gangster? What is that? What is that term? It's just funny the way that's part of the sort of moral panic element to this, right? This older guy going like, gangster? Like you don't want to be a gangster. Why would you celebrate that? But so yeah, regardless, we get the thing that I feel like happens all the time on TV shows and never in real life, the teacher coming to your house.
That's right. And so we don't see him go to Chris Smith's house. We see him go to Chris Kelly's house. Apartment, and the dad answers the door, and the dad's like,
he's named Loco.
Oh yeah, he's named Loco. Whitley's there. This is the only kind of, the main appearance that we get of Jasmine Guy in this episode.
Yeah, she's kind of off to the side here and there.
Yes, but what we do get of her, she has just taken this caricature of a Southern Belle debutante girl and just elevated it. Like she is, every little movement, motion, word she says is so, it's almost like musical in the this character that she's created. It really is wonderful to watch, even in these little snippets. It's like, man, that's good. She's good. And then you just gotta go right back into the show. But like, she's so good that it like takes me a second that I have to like, I just look at her and I'm just listening to her and not really like in the show for a minute because she's like good. Anyway, so he's at the kid's apartment and the dad is like basically telling him to fuck off.
Oh yeah. Well, the dad says straight up like, I instill the fear of God in my son. He knows that if he gets beat up out in the world, I'm going to beat him up at home. Like He has to be a tough, strong guy and is not receptive at all to anything that Dwayne says. Yeah.
And then it devolves into them like coming to blows, right? Yeah. So the dad is like, Dwayne keeps pushing and being like, come on, do you want your kid to end up in juvie forever? Do you want your kid to end up dead? Do you want your kid to be a gang banger? And the dad just like reaches in his waistband and is like, yeah, and you know what? Get the hell out of here, basically. And so then they start pushing each other, and the kid comes out and sees this all. And the dad is like, why don't you run along out of here? And I'll show my son who a real man is. Which one do you think he's going to, look up to after this? And Dwayne nods and leaves.
Yeah. And again, this is where it sort of crystallized for me what this Dwayne Wayne character was really supposed to represent. That, it's not about him being a grown-up nerd. It is very much like, yeah, he is this modern, enlightened, educated young black man that's supposed to be like the answer to this kind of caricature.
Right. Like when Kanye first came out and was like, I don't need to slouch my pants kind of a thing. Like this is that same sort of, I'm still cool, but I'm really smart. And I don't I don't have to be, gangster to have cred. Hopefully Dwayne Wayne didn't go the way of
I was just going to say, Kanye was nothing but smooth sailing from then on. So yeah, back at school, Dwayne sits them down and, he asks them straight up, like, if you had a gun, would you kill him? He's talking to the little Kriss Kross kids, and they both say like, yes, if I had the means, I would murder him right now.
Yeah. And he's very surprised that the kids show up the next day, especially Chris Kelly after that confrontation with his dad. He just figured he wouldn't show up and that would be that.
Yeah. They have more of this, like we said, he kind of gets at their aspirations. The one kid says, well, I guess if I could be anything, I'd be a movie star. The other kid says his garbage collector thing of, the garbage truck gets to stop all of the, all the cars behind it. And he gives them the parable of the fleas, like you alluded to earlier. It's the same kind of thing with the elephant doesn't realize he's not tied to the stick anymore. That idea that your limitations are just in your mind. And there were 2 fleas that were stuck in a jar, but then they took off the lid, but they never knew that the lid wasn't there anymore and they could go wherever they wanted. And just like you said, it's just funny how times change and attitudes change. And it's like at this point in time, we felt like, young black kids needed to hear that they didn't need to be gangbangers, that they could go on and do anything we want. And now the feeling is that the rest of society needs to hear there's a reason why so many of those kids turned out to be gangbangers. And it's not as easy as you think. And maybe that lid that you thought had been pulled off was actually there and you didn't know it was there.
Exactly. So they don't ever decide to do a presentation about a historical black figure, but we go to commercial and then we come back and everybody's doing their presentations and we get Kriss Kross and they're decked out in what kind of look like oversized prison uniforms.
Yes, they look like they're dressed in prison outfits.
They're the gray ones, not the orange ones.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, this was a thing in music videos and stuff a lot of time, or even in the world.
Right, but they didn't, it was all the monotone, all the one color,
yes.
right?
We should say in general in this video, their clothing is ludicrous. They are wearing the clothes of 7 people between the 2 of them at any given time.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And they're doing that thing. You know how there's always in 90s examples of gangsters, there's always the one person wearing the shirt that's only buttoned at the top but then the rest of it's open. It's like a flannel that's only buttoned with the top button.
Yes, they love that look.
That's always to me, that is so Dangerous Minds. That's just every time I see that.
This whole episode, Dangerous Minds was adapted into this episode. I'm surprised it's not credited in the screenplay. But and they just, it always looks like a pile of clothing with one of their heads sticking out
of it.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, so their presentation is this song.
Yeah.
Where they are rapping together about it's a shame.
Yeah. So we get a full on, I think more so than any of the others.
Song.
Yes. We get a full song, the whole verses. We get them, they're on top of these cafeteria table type thing. So it almost looks like a runway.
Right. They've built this stage that has a protrusion coming out like a runway, like you would have for a fashion show or something. Or a beauty pageant. Maybe it's been there since Miss Hillman, that last episode we watched in season 1. We get a quick Jada Pinkett in the audience,
I
and
didn't notice that.
she's like grooving in the background because she's in the show at this point, but she's not really in this episode. Only at the end she comes up and starts dancing with them, and so does Whitley and a bunch of the other characters. They get up and they start dancing with them at the end, toward the end of their song.
Yeah, it's funny the different sensibilities, because again, if this were Fox, you wouldn't be able to hear the song by the end. This would be like the Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Right, it
the
would have
crowd
been so
going
screamy.
wild. Whereas with this, I'm like, God, studio audience, give it up a little. Like they do this whole
Is
song.
there a studio audience?
Well, fake audience, whatever. We're hearing laughter and stuff. It just, there was no like reaction to this. There was no applause or anything. Like I actually felt a little awkward at the way that there was no sort of like audience energy, the way that a lot of times with these guest appearances, that's part of it. You know, if you perform a song on a sitcom set, you get people kind of jived up a little bit.
So then we see the dad that he had the previous altercation with. The dad comes in and has his hand inside his shirt and jacket, like on his chest. Like it's supposed to make us think like, oh, he's got a gun or whatever, and he's in here with his gun.
He came to assassinate his child.
Or the teacher, right?
Yeah.
So he's got his hand inside his, chest, inside of his shirt and jacket and whatever. And he's walking through the crowd. He gets over to the side, like where the teacher is standing, where Dwayne Wayne is standing. And then the song is over and Kriss Kross comes over and they're like, hey, and the dad pulls out from his breast area a jar with no lid. And he hands it to Dwayne, and the kids are like, see, it doesn't have a lid. Get it? You're the OT.
The original teacher.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, he got through to them.
He scared them straight, but didn't have to scare them.
Yeah, again,
He acknowledged them straight.
Much like Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds. I love how Kriss Kross is credited as Mac Daddy and Daddy Mac.
That's right.
In the credits. They were not initiating their, Dwayne The Rock Johnson transition yet. They're still in like Lady Gaga mode, just as their personas. But yeah, look, in a lot of ways, this was a diversion, obviously, because in the first 3 episodes, the pop stars are playing themselves. And it's all about, regardless of how organically it's woven in, it's about them, the characters
being celebrities.
Right,
yes.
exactly. And the characters experiencing them as musicians. In this case, we're getting like, no, it's this weird hybrid, because it's like, we're going to try out these kids as actors.
And they did pretty well.
And in a sense, it's the best of both worlds, I guess, because you get to see them inhabit these fictional characters, but then you also get your fun Kriss Kross song at the end. So yeah, it's funny how looking back over these, in some ways, they're different, like the first 2 are clearly of a piece because we get that fun, let's shoot a music video.
Right. They're going to do a music video in my house, in my school, whatever.
Right. And by the time we're at the end, it's a whole different thing we've got the rap artists playing these juvenile delinquents, and yet they all have that super specific time capsule thing. And they all have, the different ways that, hip hop and black culture are like making their way into the mainstream, and how are the mainstream forces reacting to that and everything. Like it's just very much like 1992, distilled into sitcom form.
Absolutely. So I am hard pressed to choose a favorite because I enjoyed this lineup so much. There was, like you said at the beginning, there is this sort of excitement when there's going to be a guest star. And then, of course, in Drexell's class, we got the surprise extra guest star of Jason Priestley. Mm-hmm. So it was like every one of these episodes was teed up for when is the performance? When is the guest star going to arrive? When is the next shoe going to drop? They all had that. And so I enjoyed every single single one of them for that reason. I really had a fun time with Drexell's class because it was totally new to me. And I love when we come across a show like that you, especially ones that you've watched before that I'm unaware of. Cause I love being like watching your glee and knowing about stuff that I'm like discovering for the first time. And it was really fun to dip into this later, a different world right after watching that season 1 episode. That was nice. Like, we don't ever do that. So that was really fun. Yeah, I can't say enough about this lineup. I'm so excited because when we were researching this lineup, we realized that we needed to narrow it just to like 89 to 92 because there are so many instances. Yeah. And so we have a whole other show that's just 93 to 96.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about MC Hammer showing up on Martin.
Oh my God, Martin alone has like 47 different acts that do a cameo. Same thing with
Sister.
Naughty by Nature is in Living Single. There's a Pete and Pete episode with LL Cool J. Like, I'm so excited about the next version of this now.
Yeah, for me, the first 2, I think, are really the sort of like chef's kiss, perfect sitcom-y stuff. You know, I love the sort of semi-awkward integration of the pop star. You know, you're going to have Bobby Brown trying to make conversation with, 16-year-old Regina King. Like, I love all that stuff. And again, the Fresh Prince having that sort of Ferris Bueller type plot and everything, that is all great. And then, Drexell is fun, but it's just so foxy. By foxy, I don't mean sexy. I mean Fox, the network, just having that, again,
early 90s Fox. Yes.
Shot on video, the story being kind of disjointed and random, the whole sensibility being kind of rude and problematic. Like, yes, love it or hate it.
And I normally don't love those, but I really had a fun time with that one.
Yeah. And again, Different World is fun because just watching Kriss Kross is just hysterical and super nostalgic. But it is like sort of vaguely disturbing for the reasons that we said. Having that show that really is such a sort of bastion of like representation and like a good portrayal of Black characters and a good outlet for Black writers and performers and everything. Having it take that sort of condescending, sort of semi-ignorant attitude about these gang warfares and super predators and everything, like it kind of gave me a little bit of a queasy feeling.
Yeah, I mean, look, it felt dated to me in certain ways, but I think what it made me think about, though, is just the difference 30 years makes.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about generational poverty and generational trauma and that kind of stuff, this is 30 years before. So this is 2 generations before. And they may be like, maybe at that time, only 2 generations away from like the redlining and and all of this stuff that kind of caused that to begin with. Right. And so it was just really interesting to see that in that time, or looking at that as a time capsule and then being like, oh, okay. Not that, like, we might not exactly say those things in those ways anymore, but that's what 30 years does.
Yeah, but it bugs me to think like this probably reinforced stereotypes for me at that age.
Definitely.
Growing up in a community where, there were like 3 Black kids in my school,
right.
And seeing this, despite, Kadeem Hardison's character and everything, having all of those alternative representations, I probably took away subconsciously from this,
Yeah, it was definitely speaking to white people in a way that it would, like, the message maybe wouldn't have landed in the same way that they would have wanted to.
Yeah. That's why with Bobby Brown and BBD, it's nothing but good times and, fancy moves. So
there you go.
That's where I want to live. All right. So much for our early 90s hip hop guest stars. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, Jay, I'd like to ask you to go to the Sadie Hawkins dance with me. We are watching the Donna Reed Show, Season 4, Episode 37, The Man in the Mask. Punky Brewster, Season 3, Episode 16, This Spud's For You. Parker Lewis Can't Lose, Season 1, Episode 6, Gag Dance. And Strangers with Candy, Season 1, Episode 5, Bogey Nights.
Yep, next week is Sadie Hawkins Day. If you don't know what that means, we'll tell you all about it And until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.